beautiful high school cats here. And Tom Bones, Malone, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Nice to be here.
Can you talk a little bit about how you think it helped you learning blues first before jazz? I mean, Charlie Neville, Coltrane, Sonny, you all started on the R&B circuit before you learned bebop. And I want you to talk about how that helped you learn to play melodically.
Well, I actually started playing jazz in an organized way when I got to the Boy Scout camp when I was 13. I was the youngest counselor. I was the camp bugler. And
the bugler?
I was the camp bugler, yeah.
Not the fiddler?
And the guy, a clarinet saxophone player named Arthur Matthews, who is now a urological surgeon, he saw me with my trombone case and he says, "You want to play some Dixieland music?" And I said, "Sure." I had no idea what Dixieland music was, but we started playing Dixieland music, and we formed a little band of counselors at the camp, and that was my first experience, like looking at chord symbols and improvising. And Dixieland is kind of a simplified model of improvisation, so it was a kind of a good place to start in a way.
So the Dixieland came before the R&B?
I was about 13 at the time. When I was 14, I started playing saxophone in a rhythm and blues band, and that's when I got introduced to the blues scale, which is slightly different than Charlie Parker bebop.
So the pentatonic scale.
You musicians out there that are listening understand
They're digging
what I'm talking about. Yeah, pentatonic scale works in blues and jazz. It depends. It might be a different pentatonic scale depending on the chord symbol. But anyway, I started by trial and error started playing blues, and it turned out to be a slightly different kind of music.
Do you hear the blues in modern jazz today? One of the things that I think about and talk about a lot is the individual sound. And I hear a homogenization of sound today because I think a lot of cats are learning from professors and they're coming out sounding just like their professors. So my question is, how did you develop your own individual sound? What would be your advice to cats out there on how to develop their own sound?
Well, first of all, you should find somebody that you really admire. You really like something about an artist you really admire on your instrument. Like if you're a trumpet player, it might be Freddie Hubbard, it might be Miles Davis, it might be Dizzy Gillespie, but find a solo, learn to play it note for note, and analyze it according to the chords. And that's a good place to start. And if you listen carefully to enough people, you might come up with your own style. But your own style is going to come from your own brain. A while ago, you were talking about blues and jazz. Listen to Lee Morgan. Lee Morgan.
The Sidewinder.
Yeah.
Explain to the audience.
He throws blues licks into jazz, not just on the Sidewinder, but on other bebop things that he's played on. He's a good example of somebody that utilizes blues licks in what we call bebop jazz. There's a way to put it in there.
How did you take Hendrix tunes? Can you talk about how you worked those tunes for Gil, those Jimi Hendrix
Well,
tunes?
we actually did a concert at Carnegie Hall. It was about 2.5 hours long of Jimi Hendrix music, and 2 of my arrangements I think made the album. I actually did 4, including Isabella, which is one of my favorite Hendrix songs. And but we recorded that at RCA Studios, the Jimi Hendrix album. And
did Gil get off on it? He liked it?
Well, first of all, Jimi Hendrix was like my favorite guitar player. I heard him when Are You Experienced came out. I was in a very relaxed situation in college, and when I heard this record, it just blew my mind. So Gil Evans had met Jimi Hendrix, and they were going to collaborate on a record, and they agreed that they were going to make a record when he got back from London. Tragically, he didn't come back from London. So Gil decided he was going to go ahead and do a Hendrix tribute anyway, and he did. And we all, David Horowitz, Howard Johnson, Pete Levin, all of us who were in the band at the time that arranged, did our best to capture his music, including Gil Evans, Castles Made of Sand, classic arrangement.
What made Gil a great leader? I mean, he even always used to tell cats, it was always a scuffle. There was always a resistance to the music,
Not with Gil Evans. Gil Evans wanted you to express yourself. He had a free attitude about music and he gave you freedom as a member of the band. In his own words, I used to hang out with Gil between sets at Sweet Basil. We'd go out the back door on Bleecker Street by the garbage can and just talk. And I asked him several questions that he answered in an unusual way. But so there's a trumpet player sitting with the band, and he came to Gil while we were back there, and he said, "Gil, what am I supposed to play?" Gil said, "If you feel like playing, stand up and play." And I said, "It doesn't matter. If the band is playing the melody and you feel like playing, stand up and play." Says if somebody else is already standing up and playing, and you feel like playing, stand up and play. And then he said, if you don't feel like playing, don't play. This young man was very confused even at the end of the conversation. I knew exactly what Gil went, because that's the way
Now,
Gil
let me
was.
ask you,
Gil-
Billy
Gil-
Harper, Howard,
Billy
and
Harper.
you, is that the way you guys did it?
That's the way we did
When
it.
you felt it like it, you did it.
Yes.
It was not a formula trip. It wasn't like now Bones is going to take a solo.
No, it wasn't. It was totally freeform.
God, that is fantastic. When did you first experience that kind of that freeform? Was it with Frank? Was it with Les Elgert? When?
Well, it was with Gil Evans, that kind of freedom.
Play if you feel like playing.
So when I wanted to move to New York from North Texas State, I called up a friend. I said, "Can I crash on your floor?" And he said, "Yeah." So I came up. My friend went on the road. About 2 months later, I inherited a cheap apartment. So my friend Hannibal Marvin Peterson, he's a black jazz trumpet player,
Is he
R&B
still with us,
singer.
by the way?
What?
Is he still with us?
I hope so.
I love that guy,
I haven't
dude.
heard from him in a long time. I do too.
Go ahead.
So Hannibal Marvin Peterson, he was a R&B singer and a jazz trumpet player. So he says, "Can I come to New York and crash on your floor?" And I said, "Sure, come on up." So he immediately started working with Gil Evans and Rahsaan Roland Kirk. That was the guy that played 3 saxophones at the same time.
That's right.
And so one night he has 2 gigs, and the gig with Gil Evans didn't pay any money. So he says, "You want to sub for me with Gil Evans?" And I said, "Sure." I'm playing trumpet for him, subbing for him. So I went there and I met a whole bunch of people that changed the rest of my life at a free gig. David Sanborn. We ended up becoming close friends, playing with Gil for the next, 8 or 9 years. I played on his first demo. They got him his first album and played on his first 3 albums. Still very good friends. I met Lou Soloff and Dave Bargeron. Lou Soloff was the trumpet player that played on Spinning Wheel. Dave Bargeron was the current Blood, Sweat, and Tears trombone player.
Absolutely.
They called me up a year or so later, and hired me to play trumpet with the band.
Well, I wanted to ask you.
Howard Johnson. Now, Howard Johnson played tuba and bari sax and a whole bunch of other instruments. He liked me because I played tuba and a whole bunch of instruments. So when Saturday Night Live called him up, they said, "We want you to recommend musicians for the horn section." He recommended me, and that's how I got that job. Also, David Horowitz, the arranger, the original keyboard player with Tony Williams' Lifetime. He was in the band.
That's right.
He turned out to be quite an arranger for recording sessions and stuff, and quite a brilliant soloist in his own right. He did some of the arrangements for that record, the Hendrix record. Herb Bushler, the bass player. Billy Harper, the tenor player. Yeah, I met Bruce Ditmus, the drummer. Met so many people that night.
Sue Evans on percussion.
Yes, exactly.
She still won't come on the show.
All these people changed
Let
my
me ask you-
and John Abercrombie.
Rest in peace.
Yes.
But why did you, like, I know that you went home, Bargeron called you, said we need a trumpet player.
Right.
I know you went home, you heard your voicemail, and it's like you got the gig with Zappa.
Yeah.
So
I missed the gig with Zappa
no,
playing
but I'm
bass.
saying, like, what was the reason you chose Blood, Sweat, and Tears?
Well, I had already chosen them. I'd already taken the gig, and so I never looked back. And I recommended Tom Fowler, and he sounded great with the band. Frank loved him. Played with Frank for the next 4 or 5 years. Everything was good. That's one of the things you do as a professional musician. If you can't make the gig, you recommend somebody that it's really good to recover it for you. That's the way professionals work.
Did you arrange for the Last Waltz?
I did. The only thing that made the movie was stage fright. Rick Danko on Stage Fright.
Can you talk about that experience?
Oh, the Last Waltz.
Just any kind of arranging you did for Levon or the band.
Well, I did all the arrangements for Levon Helm and the All-Stars.
Well, that's
all
the greatest
horn
band of all
arrangements.
time, by the
That
way.
was, yeah.
Lou Marini,
Lou
Cropper,
Marini.
Duck Dunn, everybody.
Yeah, and
Hojo.
Alan Rubin, Lou Marini.
Booker T.
We had Booker T and Dr. John on
Mac
keyboards.
Regan.
And not to be left out, Paul Butterfield on harmonica.
Butter.
Yeah, also rest in peace.
What was it like to arrange for those
It
kinds
was
of tunes?
It was a whole different scene.
Yeah.
And one of the things I tried to do on several songs was, if you listen carefully, I tried to harmonize the horn section with the harmonica. I didn't think anybody ever really done that, so I wanted to do that.
Wow.
Yeah, Ain't That a Lot of Love is an example of that from that album, one of those albums. We only did 2 albums of that band.
And there was a unique like mobile recording setup with Eddie Offord, I think.
Eddie
right?
Offord set up, Levon just had a big barn, it was a big room, and Eddie set up his board right in the middle of the room. He set up voice of the theater speakers blaring at us. We did not use earphones on the horn overdub session. He had the speakers blasting, and he had the microphones out of phase in a certain way that made it work. He wanted us to sound like we were on stage. Eddie Offord recorded some of the live albums with Yes. You know, he was a,
Well, but also, I mean, there were a couple of late nights when Dr. John would just tell you stories while he played the piano.
Oh yeah.
What were those
yeah.
stories? Like, did he tell you about like the creatures in the bayou or something?
Well,
like,
he was a licensed doctor of voodoo in the state of Louisiana.
No,
he had a lot
voodoo,
of
man.
stories, of flying saucers and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, he was an interesting guy to say the least. Oh my God, Dr. John.
At the end of the day, it's about being nice to people.
Yes.
I think we have a situation now in this country, especially the titular head of the government. Basically, you talked earlier about God seeing everybody equally.
Yeah.
We're not really in that time now, in some ways at least. And I just want you to give some words of inspiration to those about keeping both feet on the ground, getting out of the way, whether it's music or whether it's a relationship, just getting out of the way and being, like you said, a good person.
Well, you have to be a good person regardless of if other people are not good people. You still have to keep your head above water, and you still have to keep your dignity and your respect. And the way you receive respect is by giving respect. I think things are about to get better. Just the news I heard today was I'm thinking that things were going to get fixed and that our country is going to get better.
You don't need to prognosticate about it, but can you give an example when someone treated you badly and you still came back with being nice?
That's my pattern. It doesn't matter what somebody says. I'm bulletproof. Somebody can say whatever they want to, and
Was there a demarcation point, early on where that became something that was just sort of almost a mantra for you?
not really. I just always shrugged it off. I refused to believe anything negative, and always took the positive path.
Before I let you go,
And I knew if I wasn't brilliant, that I would strive to be brilliant.
can you tell, for people that are going to watch this in 40 years, tell me a great Willie Colon story?
Oh my goodness!
I mean, would you lay your part? Would they call you in later, or would you lay those tracks down and they do the? Was it like the blood, sweat, and tears kind of thing where you'd get, live ready? Bargeron said you'd get live ready,
Yeah.
and then you'd break the sections down. It's not like you were hitting all at one time. Was
Well,
it the same policy at Fania?
We did play live with all the stuff with blood, sweat, and tears, and then just from the experience of playing live, we would overdub the parts and have them clean. Willie worked both ways. They at Fania Records, they like to do everybody live in the room, and they would try to separate things with gobos and rooms and stuff like that. Isolation. But he liked the feeling of everybody playing at the same time. Willie and I loved each other. We're still good friends. I'm still in touch with him, by the way.
What made him a transcendent musician in your mind? He's kind of unheralded.
Well, actually, the first Latin trombone player was a guy named Barry Rogers, and at Barry Rogers' funeral, Willie Colon spoke, and he said he said he was playing trumpet on the street with a conga player up in the Bronx when he heard Eddie Palmieri's record with Barry Rogers playing the trombone. He said when he heard that trombone sound, he went out and bought a trombone. So it was actually Barry Rogers was the first Latin trombone player. And Willie emulated him. And Barry Rogers plays on several Willie Colon albums. I played on several Willie Colon albums as well.
It's all music, and it can be played by all human beings.
Yes.
Barry Rogers was as Jewish as they come, and he was the best Latin.
Mike Brecker spoke at the funeral also, and he said Barry Rogers was the only Jew he knew that could fix a car. He was a Jewish guy.
They do joke about the Jewish toolbox.
It's
Slim.
exactly,
I love that line from Brecker, dude.
Michael Brecker. Barry was raised he was a Jewish guy raised in a Puerto Rican neighborhood in the Bronx. So all he listened to on the street was Puerto Rican music. So it came natural to him to play that music. He said he actually wanted to be a jazz player, but said that he found himself married with a kid on the way, and he started playing Latin music because that was the first thing that was presented to him to make a living. But he, hung out with the Puerto Rican guys, and all the Puerto Rican guys can fix cars.
What is your primary
By the way, Barry Rogers' son, Chris Rogers, is now putting out jazz records, and he's an accomplished jazz trumpet player. I'd say in the style of Randy Brecker. We just played on a big band album where Randy and Chris and I played some solos, and it was just a great experience to hear him play. And I told him that story about his father, wanted to be a jazz player, and he'd never heard that.
Really?
Yeah.
Who played drums with you with Les Elgar?
Oh, we had a lot of different drummers. That was in the Dallas area.
I can't believe you played bass with that guy.
Oh, yeah. Bass parts were easy, just 1, 2, 3, 4. Elephant's Memory bass parts were a little harder. I played with him for a week one time.
That's right, you did say that. What is the most, we're here in Tucson, my hometown, not my hometown, but where I found my voice as a broadcaster. And if you have anything that you want to get across to the younger cats on these trips now, I mean, it's a very transient thing. There's no touring circuit. I look at these cats now and I say, what is a career in music? You can't quantify music. So is it still seen as a profession? And I just wonder about what you want to instill in these guys to be, to persevere.
Yes. Well, a lot of people that play also have another job that keeps them going. Like teaching music is good because it keeps you thinking about music all the time, and people ask you questions, and it brings you to a new place. Like today, somebody asked me a question I'd never heard before. So it let me re-examine my whole life from a different angle.
What did they ask you?
Oh, what was the question? I already forgot what the question was.
Exactly. All right, well, Bones, I can't wait to see you play your ass off, man. It's great to connect with you in person, and we'll do more.
It's always a pleasure to hang with you, Jake. Keep up the good work.
This is the Jake Feinberg Show. See you later.